Hey everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and this video will showcase the fastest cars in the GTA 5 Tuners subclass, organised first of all by race tier and then by lap time within each tier, with the top speed of each vehicle also shown in order to identify any outliers. All 19 tuner cars have been put through their paces on my testing track and top speed run, and we'll be going from the slowest G tier cars to the top S tier in this video. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on future testing of new vehicles added to GTA 5 and beyond, and check out all other classes in the playlist. This video is brought to you by Bruffy.com. This is my website where you can find all the info you need about me and my content, from a fully documented catalogue of my videos with chronological playlists to live streaming plans and much more. Go straight there with a link in the description and pinned comment. So as we see the vehicles in the Tuners class that aren't usable in regular races, basically because Rockstar forgot to make their custom versions available so only the stock options are selectable from the race lobby, it's important for me to let you know that the intro video to this series, which is linked in the description and pinned comment, likely answers any questions you have about this testing. From simple things like what car upgrades are needed to maximise performance and what HSW stands for, to more complicated things like why I use off-road wheels and overall testing methodologies. Give that video a watch if there's anything you don't understand here, since everything there is assumed knowledge for this video. So after the forgotten about non-raceable postlude and Kanjo SJ, we have some single car tiers first of all, with the Warrener HKR in tier G and the Futo GTX in tier F, both being significantly off the pace of the rest of the class. For context, the ZR350, which we're going to see in tier E, is over 3 seconds per lap better than the Futo GTX, which is right behind it, while the rest of the class ahead of the ZR350 is only separated by 4 seconds from top to bottom. So yeah, these two in these first two tiers are really far off the pace from the rest of the pack. And if they were raceable, the Kanjo SJ would sit in tier G with the Warrener, and the postlude would be in its own tier H at the very bottom, but obviously it's only the stock versions that can be used, unfortunately. Now, tiers E and D both contain 2 cars each, with the Dominator GTT being just ahead of the ZR350 for lap time, but having a slightly worse top speed, which is a standard feature that you see from tiers across this whole series, because the D tier also has that exact same feature, with the higher top speed but worse lap time RT3000 going up against the better lap time but lower top speed Remus. So a decent balance, and that's always something that, you know, it's always aiming to try and do, that if a car is a little bit worse for lap time within a tier, it at least will have a higher top speed, so that depending on the track and depending on the situation, it might be competitive over, you know, the course of a race, or if there's a track with longer straights or something like that. So tier C is probably one of the most interesting overall, because it contains 3 vehicles, all from different primary classes, with muscle, sedans and coupes all represented and able to race together within the Tuners subclass, with cars that are separated by less than half a second of lap time. We start with the Dominator ASP, which has the best top speed of the group to counter its relative lack of grip in comparison to the other 2, because the grip monster Tailgater S is up next, sitting only 1,000th of a second behind the Previan, which is our number 1 car for tier C. Now, there's definitely some interesting battles you can have with these 3 cars. Obviously, you've got the really grippy Tailgater S versus the better top speed Dominator ASP, and then the Previan is kind of a mix of sort of the best of everything in a way, although its top speed is the lowest of the 3. And yeah, it's just really nice to be having 3 different full primary classes with cars all very close, all racing together. Now, there is an argument for merging the B and C tiers, and you can certainly do that in your own racing if you want to, but we're starting to get into the realms of some of the top cars in the class overall for top speed. So while the Comet S2 is only fractionally quicker than the Previan for lap time, its massive top speed advantage means that it will likely always be quicker on most tracks. The Cypher is a further half a second per lap quicker than the Comet, but the balance comes into tier B once again with the top speed, given that the Cypher has one of the worst top speeds of the entire class. B tier racers will be all about the top speed of the Comet trying to counter the grip of the Cypher. We find our 4th tier out of 8 total to contain 2 cars next, with the A tier, separated by 9,000ths of a second. The Euros and Jester RR in most instances will be very closely matched. Obviously 6th and 5th place for the tuners class in terms of their lap time positioning. The greater top speed of the Jester RR, which is enough to put it into the top spot overall for the tuners class, will help it on some tracks, but the nimbleness and enjoying the bumps of the Euros will help it to be a relatively balanced tier, though the balance of this tier is probably more dependent on the track type than other tiers in the tuners class. And that brings us on to one of the best top tiers in any class in the game. Consisting of 4 cars to make it the biggest tier in tuners, the S tier is only separated by 1/4 of a second of lap time from top to bottom. In addition to that, we see the pattern we always like to see with tiers, where the cars that are slightly off the pace for lap time, such as the Growler here and next up with the Calico, which both achieve 102.9 lap times, have the better top speeds, sitting in 3rd and 4th place for the class respectively. So while the first 2 cars in tier S might not have the grip of the top 2, given the right track they'll be right up there and potentially the best to use on circuits with longer straights. The Calico also has the benefit of really impressive acceleration, although it does also have the understeer that you would associate with that, but that certainly helps it in some of the tight, twisty, stop-start style street races where tuners are most frequently used. But for most of those street races, you're going to want to be using one of our top 2 cars for the ultimate best lap times. The Vector sits in 2nd place, just 15 thousandths slower than our number 1 car, and is easily the most grippy car in the class. If the Growler has the edge for top speed and the Calico is the best for acceleration, the Vector is the king for its cornering ability. But what happens if you put a little bit of all 3 of those factors together? Well, you get our number 1 car of the Sultan RS Classic. It's a challenge to drive in some ways because it doesn't like a lot of the, it can be inconsistent, let's say, on some of the bumps, and if you go through any bushes and things, it can get turned around quite easily. It's also the lightest of these vehicles, so it can get knocked around quite easily, and it is sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, but ultimately it is the quickest car in the class overall. It's got enough of everything to make it the best all-rounder. Now there will be some situations where other cars in the S tier will be quicker, but the Sultan will always be competitive. And you can see in the comparison how close the top 2 are, with the Vector pulling away with the grip before being pulled in towards the end by the Sultan's slightly better straight line speed and just general all-round ability to keep the speed up all the way through the lap, whereas the Vector does lose a little bit towards the final stages where it's more about that straight line speed. And while the tuners might not have those crazy top speeds that they originally had when they were first released by applying low grip tyres, because that's now been fixed, they do provide some really interesting races. And to be honest, at this stage I'd argue that tuners, with its lack of HSW or other stupidly quick cars ruining the class, it's one of the more pure classes in the game, which is kind of ironic given it's not even an official primary class for these cars, which it quite easily could have been. You know, unlike when they added a brand new class to the game with open wheels, the tuners class is just sort of a secondary selection of cars that are also in sports, muscle, sedan and coupes. Tuners also haven't seen a new vehicle edition for quite a while now, probably been forgotten about, I would say, by Rockstar at this stage, and to be honest, in my opinion, that's absolutely fine. With some great tiers up and down the order, a nice balance at the top with multiple cars able to be used, and a nice manageable number of cars in total at 19, it kind of feels like an old school class, and I've definitely come to appreciate it more over time as other classes inevitably get more bloated and unwieldy with kind of ridiculous cars at the top. But that's everything for this video. Please consider supporting on Patreon or become a YouTube member if you want to support this work and get some extra perks for doing so, such as early access to videos and other testing results. And also remember to read the description for more info, comment with your thoughts, like the video if you enjoyed or found it helpful, and subscribe for more. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.